lead into the conversation now. So as we get going, every session, we'd like to take a moment to recognize the fact that SAIT is situated on the traditional territories of Blackfoot Confederacy. Today, that area encompasses the Indigenous people of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, including the Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. And so welcome. You all have the speaker bios and the invitation. I'm going to do a very quick introduction of our panel here so we can get into the discussion. And I'll just get folks, well, your names are on screen. So, Krista Hill and Renee Matsala, product and executive coaches and co-founders at Tacit Edge. Great to have you here. Marcy Jones, Director of Product Delivery at TC Energy. Laura Busis, Product Manager of Digital at SAIT, and she's going to be leading today's conversation. We have Leanne Davies providing us some great support in the background as well. Thank you for that, Leanne. And I'm Craig Hess. I'm the Director of Corporate Training here at SAIT, and I'm going to be in the background today, moderating the chat and the Q&A. And with that, Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you. I will pop all of our panelists' LinkedIn profiles into the chat. And over to you, Laura. Have a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, and thanks again for setting this up. And I'm very excited about this conversation. So my role actually sits with the Center for Continuing Education and Professional Studies, and we work very closely with our School for Advanced Digital Technology to build training programs, build and iterate on training programs that we really see unlocking sort of the diversification and technology in our province. So I'm super excited because this topic is near and dear to my heart. I mean, as everybody knows, education is being disrupted, and we've had to take a product approach to how we build learning products. And I've had the great fortune of meeting some amazing product leaders that we can have a conversation with today and just learn a little bit about how to create great products and unlock value in organizations. So I'm super excited, somewhat selfishly, but also excited for the potential, right, for people to leverage the expertise we've got here today. So maybe what we'll do, if it's okay with you guys, we could just start with a conversation around, well, what is product management? And I know, Krista, you and I have talked about this a lot. Do you want to just kind of take us through what is product management?
Thanks, Laura. That's a great place to start, as we are all trying to demystify what this is for the industry as we introduce it more and more into the ecosystem in Alberta. So by definition, our role is the intersection of the business, the users, and technology. So typically in an organization, a product manager is the person who identifies the customer need and the larger business objective that a potential new product or a product could be evolved to, and perhaps a new feature that we could build to fulfill that objective. We often collaborate to find and discover what success looks like for a product, and we're the champions of articulating that across the business and across teams. So, when we do that, though, what we're really doing is we're rallying teams towards making a vision for a product a reality. And this can really look like us working with teams to apply technology that is just now possible to problems in the business that are old and new. Okay, so essentially what we call ourselves are the intrapreneurs in your organization. Renee, I don't know if you have anything to pile on to that, but that's really how we're defining it as we go forward, especially with the curriculum that we have with SAIT.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's the intrapreneur and entrepreneur mindset is, I think, the best analogy we can think of. Or think of, the director in a movie, someone who has the vision, but is also rallying people to achieve that vision.
So what would you consider to be a product then? Is it an actual physical thing? Is it like, I know the role kind of came out of tech, but what would you actually consider to be a product? Does it have to be a thing?
No, it doesn't have to be a thing. It can be a concept or a service. And services can start small, being very manual, and then over time become standardized and productized as we scale, as you realize success. So it can be anything, but it's really driven by an overall business objective that you're trying to achieve. And then we work that backwards with either technology, people, or process to achieve that goal.
So Marcy, at TC, what sort of products have you guys been looking at within your product team? Because this is you're a very kind of traditional energy organization. So, what would be the products that TC would be looking at in terms of this role championing?
For sure. Well, I think I love the term entrepreneur because product management inside an enterprise or an organization, or what I come to refer to as B2B, is very different than B2C. So I think it's really easier for people to relate to a business to consumer product manager or product line, because that's what we've all trained on, is directly working with consumers in terms of servicing that specific product that tends to be tangible, or in today's virtual world, very apparent and on our screen. The approach that we've taken is one of product lines, and we're very much so followed some principles that were put out by Gardner and some recommendations they had there. So we're actually looking at servicing a variety of products from a service function more directly for a customer group or business group. So I love the analogy Krista puts out there of the intersect between technology, which is actually our service offering, the business who owns the actual outcomes we're trying to achieve, and then the users, which are actually leveraging that technology that we're using. And that's where we really placed it in the middle of that. We've started very much so from a product line perspective, which gives us a bit more breadth to the portfolio, but quickly zooming in on particular technologies or products as we're refining it that we're really seeing to be high value for both the business and the users.
Oh, yeah, awesome. So Renee, I know you've got a background in Agile. How does product management differ from project management and product ownership? I think like often when we talk to people, there's a lot of confusion between those various roles.
Yes, and the confusion is real, and we're still not totally all in agreement on what the different roles are, but we're starting to get there. And let's start with project management. They really are two very different to both very important roles. We love project managers because they get things done on time and on budget. They're really delivery focused. But in product management, we manage a whole product or solution and ensure it brings values to our customers while also working for the business. So we're much more, big picture focused, inspiring people to achieve an outcome, while we're not necessarily following an exact plan, and that plan can change. Whereas project managers, they're delivering according to a plan. But in product, we're iterating as we learn. We could even throw plans out entirely if we find that they're not working to solve problems for our users anymore. And same thing really for product ownership. They're very related. A product owner is a role on a Scrum team, which is part of an Agile team. But again, we find that product owners in the industry are often more delivery focused, again, focused on delivering solutions versus creating a vision towards solving a problem. So again, product managers, entrepreneurial, we're close to the users, their needs, this business strategy, the market, whereas product owners are much more focused on delivery teams internally. But product management works amazingly in agile environments that allow for small iterations and experiments towards solving a problem, instead of building a whole giant solution that we're not sure even works. We love the small iterations where we can constantly learn.
Mhm.
And it's having those insights, right? In product management, we're looking for insights to see if every step of the way there is a change that we have made that is improving the value of the business. We don't often see that in project management until the lagging indicators and that after the project is complete. So there's product ownership and product and project management are closer tied together than product management is to both of those, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I might just add really quick. I can tell you in an enterprise, sometimes you need the lines a little bit more black and white, and to drive some of the behavioral changes. And I can tell you for us, I look at it as project management is a vehicle that has a start and finish. It's defined. And you might use project managers to deliver on a component of your project. And there's a start date and an end date, whereas product management, that end date is really just a component, and that is one piece of a larger strategy that they have project managers delivering on. So it's pretty clear for us in the sense of the project manager, the job never ends. They're forever evolving and growing, whereas a project manager has a clear defined start and end date.
Yeah, I love that. I know
Yeah.
for, my experience has been in education and adopting some of the product management principles is that it's given us an opportunity to be very, very learner problem solution focused, where we're absolutely, we're actually have a line of sight to that versus kind of all the internal stuff that goes on. And so we're very, very solution focused. We're not a tech company, though. Obviously, we're an education provider. I know that product management came out of tech, but can you all speak to just how you're seeing this role evolve in industries outside of tech and where you're seeing it adding a lot of value?
It's really everywhere now, Laura, and we're so grateful that that transition is happening. When you look at the definition of what we gave you of what we do, you can apply that to any industry, any modality within your organization. It's all about trying to figure out how to deliver value and move the goals of the business forward. And everyone has goals. Every business, if they want to succeed, needs that kind of framework to ensure that they can measure to see if they are reaching those goals. So it doesn't matter if you're in HR. We've been working with a ton of HR folks on how to transform their organization to bring business agility using product management tactics to help them move the needle forward on major initiatives, such as folks working 100% remote from home. There was a lot of transformation in HR that needed to happen really quickly. And using these tactics allowed some of those organizations to move at speed to accommodate the needs of the business. So whether or not you are working on a product that is a physical thing, a piece of software, a workflow, or a service, if you have a business goal, you can use product management tactics to help you get there.
Absolutely. And so it sounds to me like there's very distinct emerging roles of product managers, but it's also I guess a methodology, a discipline, a mindset that is also kind of changing the way that teams work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Product management, it is a mindset, and it's much more around discovery, experimentation, especially if you're working in an environment where there's a lot of ambiguity, which is, let's get real, we're all working in that environment. So we have practices like discovery, user research, using design thinking to build empathy, come up with a lot of different possible solutions, prototyping to see which solution is actually the best, and constantly learning from those processes, and also inspiring teams and empowering teams to become the experts themselves and experiment as well, using their knowledge, the expertise that they have on your teams. They can really solve problems for you, and product management is all about inspiring people to solve those problems for themselves.
Totally. And you can start small with this. We work with a lot of organizations that we just take a team that is ready and a group that is ready, and we level up the product management expertise. We work with the leadership, we experiment, and then we replicate habits that are working out and around the business, right? So that's really key. And I'm sure Marcy can tell us some stories about how that is played out in her world, but starting small is key, and being really focused on the learnings is really the path to figuring this out within your organization. But in product management specifically, we're target focused on 5 key areas as a competency, right? The usability, feasibility, viability, value, and the morality of the solutions that we're proposing to the business. That's the lens we're always looking at things through. So as long as we've got that mindset, and that's really our mindset, we can collaborate across any part of the organization with any partner, again, with the eye on those 5 factors. And that's how we continually drive value in the business.
So this, this implies, I guess, when you guys are talking about product managers, I feel like, there's a need for courage, right? It's a different way of working in an organization where at some point you might say, you know what, this isn't going as we had planned. We need to pivot. We need to do something differently, or we have new data now. We need to kind of take new information into how we're actually building this out, because if you're going to be so, customer solution focused, you have to continuously update your plan according to the data that you have. So what are the indicators, how do you know the time is right, and how do you know you need this? And what does the culture look like to be able to actually implement or start doing product management? Because we want people to succeed as they kind of move through this different way of thinking.
Yeah, I'd happily jump in here. There's a lot of indicators that we see that you might need a product management mindset. So absolutely, number 1 is if your products aren't solving problems for your customers. We see this all the time. Products, solutions, processes are being released and they're not actually doing what they're intended, or what was intended isn't actually that important, and they just kind of fall flat. Or you might not know if your products are solving problems or not. This is where product folks will come in and make sure those products are working, or if they're not, that's okay. We can let go of those and focus on more important things. And we also hear a lot of complaints around slow deliveries or uncertain delivery. We don't know when things are going to be done. You don't know exactly what's going to be done. And this slow delivery is often born out of unclear focus and unclear measurements of success. So product management, again, comes in, brings focus to the most important problems to solve, for who, and how we can measure that we're getting there. Because if we don't see measurements of success, we default to, well, is it at least on time? I don't care if it's on time if it doesn't work, if it doesn't
work. Yeah, what's the point?
What's the point?
Or we're too busy and we've moved on to the next thing. We don't bother to look back to see whether or not the thing that we released and invested a ton of money in and ton of time did what we needed it to do. We've already moved on. And that is, I think, one of the biggest hurdles that we overcome with teams is how to continually measure the success that their teams are having, and how can we see what those things are live as a group and as a team, not just through one person's lens, but through all of our lenses across the business, and bringing that level of transparency to measuring whether or not the work we are doing is actually making a difference is transformative for the majority of organizations that we work with.
I think it's important, Krista, you just said there, we want to get on to the next thing. And just going back to project management, their job is to get on to the next thing. Your job as a project manager is to put check marks on a list. And don't get me wrong, I love a good check mark. I love the feeling of completion, right? We all do. But
that is incredibly satisfying.
That is the success criteria of a project manager, completion.
Yeah.
A product manager's success criteria is not completion. It is about the outcome. It is about the continuous piece. And I think it's really important, that highlight that you just made there. I think everything in the trifecta of people, process, and technology. So when I think of what is the formula, and not everything is 100%, like you do not need to have everything at this full completion. But for me in an enterprise, people, process, and technology, you need to have indicators. It's indicators of it. So technology, let's be clear, the cloud is the easiest place to iterate. Like let's really be honest with ourselves. If you're standing up infrastructure and you're doing all this with traditional technology, it's hard. So if you started playing and dabbling in the cloud, you don't have to be. These are just indicators. You might be at a place where you can start playing with product management. People, you've got some thought leaders on your team. You've got some individuals that are asking the questions of why and digging underneath those. Like that's a good people indicator. Or your business partners are asking you as a technology leader, what are your thoughts? How do you think we could do this? They're not coming with solutions, but they're coming with problems. That's a good indicator of people. And then process, I look at it as exactly what you said, Renee. It's about velocity. And it's not about getting there faster. It's about being willing to take another path. I always laugh that people use, are you using the word agile as a verb or a noun? Because they're different. And we throw that term around all the time now. So those are some of the indicators that I've seen that kind of drove us at TC towards those conversations.
So Marcy, that's a good segue. What do you think are the biggest blockers or challenges to creating a culture that's more sort of product leadership driven?
People not being willing to start, looking for the indicators of success across the entire organization, or trying to apply the all or nothing. I think one of the biggest blockers is the all or nothing approach. We have to have, to what I just said, everything in the cloud or we can't start. We have to have all of the business trusting us and asking us or we can't start. And so I think all or nothing mentality is a huge blocker versus being willing to be that change catalyst, and all you need is one to create the tipping point, to create the change curve. I think that's a really big one. A mentality of ownership. So you can be in service, but you can have a mentality of ownership. I spent a couple years in Amazon, and one of our primary leadership principles was ownership. And that was just about being relentless, not taking no for an answer. And you actually keep going until you get a yes. Even if it's a vice president or a senior person saying no to you, you actually don't stop until you get a yes. So it's the hunt for yes instead of the seeking of no. And I think too often we wait for our no. And that comes with the ownership mentality as part of that. The other thing I think that's really important for larger organizations in B2C that tends to be a blocker is we think we can do this in PowerPoint. And that means, let me come out there and show you what product management is and give you the definitions and give you the data of success and show you your role and tell you your RACI. This is all in PowerPoint, and I'm telling you, you will not be successful in PowerPoint. So if we think we're going to learn and drive the organization through telling everybody what they need to do, and I see PowerPoint is a one way, it's a push communication, we won't be able to do it. You got to have the pull mechanisms, the feedback loops. And my mantra with the team is show, don't tell. So when they've got challenges, and in the beginning it was, you need to go tell everybody my role. You need to go tell the organization how this works. And I'm like, it doesn't work in PowerPoint. And if that's what we need to be successful, then we aren't. We have to show the organization and teach them and enable them through our actions. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, one day it's going to pivot and people are going to ask us different questions. And that's when we know we've been successful.
And, Marcy, you just touched on a really important point around transformation and adopting product management. It equals a shift in the working agreement that you have with your business and your stakeholders. You have to reset it. And this is hard to do through seeing a PowerPoint presentation, just deciding we're going to do this. It's a cultural shift. It's a mindset shift. And it's best not done alone, right? Having a co-pilot along for the ride for you that has seen it all, seen all the objections, and is still cheering you on in the background, even though the first attempt at that exercise or activity that you're doing with your group to help visualize the future, to write vision, your vision and strategy, or your whatever it is that you're working on, having a co-pilot along for the ride, the adoption metrics associated with that we are seeing, it's been a game changer. Because we've been trying to teach this onesie twosie within organizations that we've worked in for a really long time, and we got quite a distance with it. But the difference between us executing on that in a small scale versus large scale meant piloted adoption, going in with a partner, having a cheerleader and a coach that you learn the competency and then you practice it and you get good at it. And then you move to the next competency and you just keep deepening it. And it continually adds more value to the business as you invest in your people in that way. And it's been a wild success doing it that way. And we've loved it. And partnering with TC is a great story of how we've been doing it in action. So if anybody ever wants to reach out to us to talk about that, it's a great tactic.
So we have a question around, can you be a product manager and a product owner? So I'm wondering if you guys could speak to that. And also, we've touched a little bit on some of the work that needs to be done within an organization to create this change. So I'm wondering if you could also speak to, what are the skill sets, mindsets, and competencies that you see in great product managers and great product teams?
Well, I can take the product manager and product owner question for sure.
If you don't want to sleep,
Yeah.
zero time.
Yeah. So yeah, ideally there's one, like a product owner absolutely can be a product manager. Ideally, there's kind of one person who oversees bringing value. And then what we've seen in a lot of companies is product owners really take on, it's the scrum role. According to Agile, capital A Agile, product owners bring value, but then they're so busy with the team and get so caught up in delivery and more project management roles that they lose sight of the business. So what we're really moving towards and recommending is that the teams can take on more of the management of their own work, because at the end of the day, it's their own work. And product owners can become more product managers, where they're market facing, where product managers are bringing the what and why, and then it's our teams that are doing the how and when. And we can bring in delivery managers or project managers to help the team with that. But really, product managers are looking to the market and empowering and leading with context, not with deadlines.
Yeah, it seems like really to get full value out of the role or the function, you need to have that focus, right? On what problems are you solving, for who and how, and really true, not false collaboration between the teams to be able to get everybody behind that vision. There's a question in the chat from Marcy. How has your journey of bringing change towards a product mindset been at TC? And did you find a co-pilot within the executive team?
Yeah, it's been very encouraging. We are about a year into this journey, and it started with just a little, I really believe what you put out there and what you say is going to set the tone for where you want to be. So we went out there and again, we followed a lot of Gardner's practices and where to start. You can't bring in a massive external army of product managers. So we found people that were really good with business relationship management, and people, what I'll call them, is starters. You're either a starter or a finisher, and we need finishers, let's be clear. And project managers are typical to finishers, but a starter is the entrepreneur. A starter is the one that has the ideas and gets things moving. So we found some roles of people that were really very much so starters. And then we just started. Literally, it was, we went through a lot of education and training. So we did do a lot of that. And I'll tell you, early days, we started with all the training out there was agile based training, and it just confused the crap out of everybody and was awful because they were being trained on how to be a scrum master and how to be a product owner. And that's not what we wanted out of individuals. So it was actually, kudos to the SATE program, the first training program that I've ever come across that actually trained for a role and not a skill. And that is very different. So that was a big proponent for us. So started recognizing it's not the same maturity curve everywhere. And for me, I didn't need the business, and I didn't need a new budgeting mechanism, and I didn't need all those things to start. I might need those things to hit certain levels of maturity, but to start, I don't. To start was start showing a different mindset, showing up in a different manner, and starting a different conversation with my customers. Now for maturity, I'm going to need more enterprise support, but that's literally where we started. And then people start asking questions, or how are you doing that? Or the best is, I really love Joe, Jack, and Jim. Like, where did they come from? Why are they showing up differently? And it's, well, they're empowered. They're playing a different role and you didn't even realize it. So I definitely had the support of my leadership. And I'll say I had the interest of my peers to entertain me on this journey. I think now we're seeing the benefits of the conversation, but we got a long ways to go. We aren't at the utopia maturity. You know, we actually pivoted some of the language that was an industry practice product owner, we've actually given to a business stakeholder. And then we have scrum masters and project managers playing those roles. But that's because culturally in TC, that's what we had to do to drive adoption. So we knew what the best practice was, but we adjusted it, or I kind of say marketed it differently internally to fit with our culture and components of it. Overall, I couldn't be happier. It did. The first year shook out, you know, who had the grit and wanted to live into the role, and who was really happy being the finisher and the analyst as part of it too, because those roles are all needed as part of the team. So I'd say we created the experiment in a way that people could step into the role in an acting manner and try it on, and be okay to play other roles as well, and recognize this isn't for me. I'm a finisher. I need my check marks. I'm going to go into this other role, and that was okay too. So it is very much so been experimental. And I'll say we've gotten incredible feedback from our customers and stakeholders, and I think our teams are really showing up differently.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I'm curious, there's a couple of comments in the chat around just challenging the status quo, and you know, because we really, I think really product management really is around champion change, advocacy. So can you guys just speak to how hard that is, and you know, how do product managers be supported in their organization as they're moving, you know, fearlessly or not so fearlessly, or you know, dealing with their own imposter syndrome to try and create value and change and activate change? Because we all know it's you know, they're all good things to do, but it's very hard, especially when organizations sometimes are quite comfortable, even though they say they want to create change. It's still a very, very difficult thing to do in terms of shifting that sort of perspective of how to create value.
Can I speak to the human element of what happens to a person going through this experience? It's a lot of what, you know, the focus of our education is, yes, on the tactics and the fundamentals, but also the human being. The ambiguity that many folks in these roles that are working today, either in title or not, is really hard work because of the lack of clarity and support they have in how and what success looks like in their role. Through this curriculum and through these tactics, we're able to define that for them, define it with their leaders, what success looks like for them in the now, the next, and the later in their careers. And for the first time, they can put that imposter syndrome on a shelf for a minute and enjoy the work, because they've realized that they're either doing it right or they're learning new ways to do it differently and better. And they're realizing success in that. And there's something about the mindset shift in an individual when they realize they're awesome and they're doing great work. And a lot of folks are missing this because they just don't know, because it's not being modeled in the organization. The expectations are here, but the expectations are not written down anywhere in this job. They want you to be curious. They want you to be perseverant and push forward. They want you to be accountable. They want you to be empathetic. But what does success look like in those things? It's not really ever known. So I think part of what we're proposing here in this transformation is not just introducing product management, but also a people strategy to give them satisfying, interesting work to which success is possible, right? Which is not what a lot of folks in our industry have today, sadly.
Yeah, and it's tough because it is an emerging role. It is like everything is emerging right now. So it's not super clear, if you're in this role, what does success look like, and how, you know, what are the behaviors and skill sets and competencies that attribute that. But I think we're getting closer with every you know, semester cohort conversation that we're having, a little bit closer to helping to define some of that. Oh, another question. I believe product managers help define the strategy of their product. Do you think it's best for someone pivoting into product management to also consider going for an MBA?
No, you can do it way faster than an MBA. Like MBAs are great, but we've proven out with our program through SATE that you can become an amazing product manager in 12 weeks. Which is, you will get the foundation and you will learn as you do. And we see that, entrepreneurs are great, getting out there, trying and building products, going to startup weekends, going to these, there's so many opportunities to engage in the community and in the business community. I recommend starting with lower risk activities like reading books, reading blogs, and then getting into a program if you're interested. But an MBA is absolutely not necessary. We see people with amazing experience in other industries being able to apply that experience in product management and become incredibly successful.
And there's also a huge misconception out there that you need to be an expert on the product that you're working on to be a good product manager. And I want to go on the record right now and say that is total rubbish. Okay, you will over time, because you're a wildly curious individual, you will figure these things out and you will become, a known expert in the product that you're working on. But very easily in the industry, as you come into a product, you can be moved to another one, just like that. Okay, so the fundamentals and what keeps you in that role and moving in it is more of a statement of your curiosity and what interests you, not necessarily your educational background.
Right.
This is so important. So important just to highlight. I just really want to put the fine point. We've all grown up in a business where the leader or the most senior person in the room is the greatest subject matter expert, because that's how we rewarded and recognized leadership in the past. You were the most senior engineer. You know this subject the most. The shift in product management is you have the abilities, not the subject matter expertise. And MBAs give you subject matter expertise, which is awesome when you need business and finance and you know how to make those decisions. But that is not what this role looks like at all whatsoever. So there's a really fine point there, Krista, to exaggerate. This is not a SME role whatsoever. You are not going to be a SME by taking a test and becoming a product manager.
Yeah. And the configuration, furthermore, to that, a lot of organizations value that. Can that person configure the product, set it up, test it? It's like, no, the shift is really at the high level, understanding the business problem you're solving, okay? And the what your product does and why, not necessarily how it does it. There's, and depending on the scale of your organization, that's going to shift, because we do have to remember product management in a startup environment looks a lot different than enterprise. And we know this, but it's understanding where you fit and how these hats come off as more people come in to help you as you grow in the future. That again, is around clarity of the role and what is the right size, right moment for these activities for product management in your organization. Sorry, Laura, I cut you off there.
That's okay. I just wanted to there was a comment in the chat and I just wanted to clarify. I mean, I'm hearing what we're saying is there's a question around needing a background in tech or an understanding of tech to be a good product manager. And what I'm hearing is that, no, we've seen highly successful product managers come through our program that have a wide diversity of backgrounds and, with a common thread of curiosity and wanting to solve for problems, but there's been an amazing diversity of backgrounds. So wanted to make sure we're kind of clear on that. There's another question about what are the biggest challenges that you have when you come into an organization that does not have an understanding of product management?
Just creating that core co-authored understanding of what it means in this organization. So we take what it means out in the world from an industry standard standpoint, and then we come in day one and start educating folks towards that. And also figuring out too with their people, is this the right fit for you? It's a hard job. It's not a junior role. This is another misconception I think is out there, that you can have junior product managers. You don't give a junior individual $1 million a year development team. Okay, so it's sort of an oxymoron the way that we think about that. This person is coming in most cases with a lot of experience around being, like I said, staying with the problem, being really curious, having a very, an outward personality, which makes them very perseverant in times where there's challenges, and they're wildly accountable and empathetic, right? But they're, in most cases, shouldn't be junior people. And so I think we should start thinking about what that means. Are we grooming the right people in our organization for this role? Okay, and are we bringing them in from the right places in the business that are appropriate for that price tag that their work will cost? And these are all really great questions that we come in and ask on day one, and then we help form the path forward. So number one is just that mutual understanding of what we're doing and why. And then we take that on the road and evangelize it and demonstrate product evangelism by making the training a product in their organization and demonstrating the competency in that, so that everybody can get on board and we can move their people through that.
Another question, can you give an example of what you've worked on using product management? Some examples of stuff you guys have worked on that maybe
Oh my God, our entire lives. I raised my
Yes.
child using these tactics.
Okay, well, that's the best answer ever.
My child is my first MVP.
MVP is minimum viable product. I think she's beyond minimum viable product. I think she's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's really any problem you want to solve. So some examples is, right now we're on Zoom. There's a product manager for the lips that I have right now. The lips,
the filters.
The filters. There's probably a product manager for that. But also we look around. Krista and I started a business around education, and so our education programs we look at as products, and how do we really solve the problems out there in the industry with these products. It can be for processes. We've worked with a lot of organizations who they work with clients, and maybe their customer support, they look at that process as a product. So tons of different examples. We could just go on and on and on. I don't know if Marcy and Krista, I'm sure you have other examples.
I think we all usually relate product management to a single entity. And at scale, if that single entity is large enough, then it fits for a dedicated individual. In an enterprise, if I were to go and hire a product manager for every application I have sitting in this organization, I would be fired tomorrow. I can tell you that much. So what we've done, it's a function of scale. So there's a certain size, and the size of that bucket might be a single product or application, whatever you're looking at, tangible or virtual. Or the size of that could be of a portfolio, in the sense of what we've kind of started with is we've used a capability in the organization and applied a product line to that. So for example, information management is a capability inside of TC. Inside of that, there's many tools, many technologies, and many outcomes we are trying to achieve under the guise of information management. So therefore we have a product manager that is managing many components inside of that. Now, they have analysts, they have many projects, they've got technical resources, they've got massive teams. None of those people actually physically report into that individual, but I can tell you they are all accountable to that individual for their work and everything they are delivering on, which is probably another major blocker, is enterprises are not good at matrix reporting. Service organizations get matrix reporting. There's your function and then there's your work. Enterprises are not good at that. So that's a major blocker. And what we had to work through is managers are people, and they are about enabling these product managers. The product managers are not accountable to the managers for their work. They are accountable to the outcomes for their work. A manager in an enterprise is about enabling, making sure they have the resources, making sure they have the money, making sure they have the support. Very different mindset for a manager or a leader in an enterprise to shift into, of being an enabler and not the one that's accountable to the work outcomes, which that is the product manager.
So you just raised something, Marcy, that is one of the, I would say, one of the top areas of friction for product managers out in the industry today, which is nobody really reports to them, right? We have to lead with context and influence folks and evangelize and get them to move towards the vision without them having a direct reporting relationship to us. Okay, which means that we literally have to give our peers mastery, purpose, and autonomy. and leading with context and not control, as that's the toolkit for us in the role. So to answer the question that we had in the chat here, why can't there be a junior PM out there in the role if you can learn the role in 12 weeks? And the answer really is, do you have the skills to be able to lead these teams in that way? Based on your experience that you've got to date, plus the training, if the answer is yes, you're golden, right? But a lot of folks need some career experience before they can learn these EQ skills, the soft skills that are the hard skills, to be wildly effective product managers. It's not to say you can't be one. It's just that you are really going to accelerate in your career if you can have those things as well.
Well, because again, to enterprises, I call it manager, which is a manager of people, or a product manager, which is the same as a manager of work, a manager of outcomes. And people would ask you, Krista, well, wouldn't they be more successful if the people worked for them? Because then they have the control and then they could make it happen.
No.
And the answer is, for anybody who's been a people leader, that is all-consuming job, and your people's well-being is your priority, not your work.
Yeah.
And we've all worked for the people leaders where the work was their priority and not your personal development. We've all worked for those people, and we probably didn't enjoy it, and we probably we're looked for someone new. So there's, by design, you don't want people reporting into this individual. They have authority, they have accountability over decisions, they have accountability over outcomes. So they've got a big stick in the work, is what I'd say. The people require feeding. That is very, very time consuming, and that is a full-time job. So it's by design on why we drive a matrix reporting in this organization and not have that command and control that a traditional manager would yield.
Yeah, because if you're building the right things and the why is really obvious, you shouldn't need a direct reporting relationship to make it happen.
Yeah, and that actually relates to this, another question we see, with the product teams improving, do we still need project teams? We're seeing less and less need, because project teams are turning into empowered teams that solve problems, that are inspired by the problem, have the information they need to solve the problem. So yeah, we are seeing less of a need for project teams, and really all teams are becoming, even if it is a project with a set end date, you still want an empowered team that knows the context, that is led by a vision and an inspiration to solve that problem, instead of just a checkmark.
If you think
How
what
about
inspires a
committees,
project team,
Renee?
sorry.
I was just going to say, how about committees, Renee? Does it reduce
Lots of committees, we love those.
Can we please say?
I think though, like the idea and why you need a project team, maybe because there's lack of focus in other parts of the organization and you needed to seclude or second a certain group to get something done that may be a high integrity commitment. Now, if you think about, if you apply product management to that, and there is strategy and evangelism around that strategy and that vision, focus becomes more inherent. The need for a project team dissipates, because the focus is everywhere in the organization, not just on these project teams. So I would say that the project team is a symptom of an organizational culture that will shift under a product-led organization.
I might just put in one sense of enterprise reality, which is projects are a function of scale. And there's a reality that we can't go build, 1 year, maybe we're doing a bunch of like big capital investments and enhancements in our, and another year that might drop. So the business reality to this is projects are also just a function of a scaling mechanism that might disappear the following year as part of it too. So you're always going to have the life of a product, but there might be instances where there's a major capability required or feature that you need to scale. Sometimes the project is a good vehicle to use that, but it's using the right tool for the job. Just like Agile doesn't work everywhere. So it's the right tool for the job. And I see that a project is a delivery mechanism tool, and you decide when you're going to use it and not use it as part of your product vision.
So we've got just a few minutes left. Maybe I could just we could just kind of have a kind of roundup question. how do you recommend getting started? Either, both coming from the lens of, you want to start bringing in product leadership into your organization, and start actually using some of these, or get value out of some of these roles or this mindset. Or if you're looking to maybe start becoming a product manager or take on a product manager role, how do you guys recommend getting started?
I can start. I can start on that question. I have a couple tips. So if you're looking to get into the role, just start reading. There's so many resources out there, to make sure that it's a role that you're really interested in and it feels like a fit for you. There's the book Inspired by Marty Kagan, Silicon Valley Product Group, that kind of is like the go-to book on this. See if that role is if it's really interesting to you, and then just start building something. Start doing something that you're interested in on the side. That's the best training you can get for this role. And then if you're in an organization and how to get started, start with a pilot. Start small. It's totally cool to start just with one team, one person, and the main activity I really see that starts getting people kind of like, oh, what is this? Is when you start just doing regular demos of what you're doing. Start showing off the work you're doing as it's in progress. And when people see, wait, they're doing new stuff every week, people start to get pretty excited about that. So that's how I would start. But I know Marcy and Krista have other ideas as well.
Yeah, like for me, the reading of Inspired really gives you a great definition of the role and how it intersects in the workplace. So if you're looking for a bit of a how-to guide on what the role could look like in the day-to-day without taking a course or going any further, is awesome, right? The other thing is we've got a boot camp. You can try this role on for size, building a real product. And when Renee said your first start is actually building your own thing, we have a ton of folks that come in that are building their own products, their own websites, their own businesses. And then we just help them through that process. And all the while we're learning the fundamentals of product management. The first CEO of every organization is the first product manager. So if you think of it that way, if you are thinking about starting your own business or you want to inspire the entrepreneurial mindset, the boot camp is a great place to go for that. We also have corporate training where you can learn with your team. So if you think you want to do this for real, come talk to us about what this could look like in the corporate environment, because there's a lot of different ways that we can do this with your teams and partner with your leadership to craft a plan. But ultimately, the want to have a job where you understand what you do and you know what success looks like is the key. So either you're getting that education for yourself by educating yourself through a boot camp or a course or doing some reading, or coming with your team because you want to adopt this as a group and you want to give it a try, and have it be a piloted situation where you can get the support that you need to really go for it. All those things are, in my opinion, a great first step for an organization, or just coming to talk to us about our experience. Hit us up on LinkedIn. We're happy to share the journeys that we've taken with anyone.
I think my advice would be it starts with you. If you're sitting in an organization and if you're sitting there reading, I think it's great. Know what and look good looks like learn. But if you're sitting there and then you finish the book and you tell yourself, well, there's 100 external reasons. And because my leader doesn't do this, and because my business partner doesn't act that way, and because my financing model isn't the same, and because we don't have agile dedicated teams, if you make it about everything that it's not, then you're not a starter. Make your first product management task, getting involved, showing up differently, and driving. Maybe your first product is standing up a product management organization.
Yeah.
As part of that. And so I'm just saying, yes, there's all of those things I mentioned are a function of very mature, high functioning product organizations. But if I waited for all of that to be in place in a tens of thousand people organization, we would have never started. Now, are we perfect? Are there people on the team that would argue me we're not in a full product market? 100%, because we're not. But we started, we're training, we're maturing. And at some point in time in that change curve, we're going to have the masses. and we are going to be at that place. But unless you have the grit and are brave enough to start showing up differently and start showing and not telling and influencing, that is your first job. Execute on that, and I can tell you, you'll get your first advocate, and then you're going to get another advocate, then you're going to get another advocate, and you got to seek that out. Like maybe those executives you need to convince are your first customer base. Get at her.
Exactly. And I have to say, just to pile on to what Marcy said, that ultimately, if you're a product manager on this call, you don't need permission to start doing and having more empowered concepts as tactics as you are building products. I never, ever in my life asked permission on how to do my job. I just read and I tried stuff. And then I worked with my teams and I told them I was trying stuff. And then it grew and it was contagious, because satisfying, fulfilling work to where you're not stressing out on release nights is wild and it's awesome. And everybody wants to work that way. So yeah, I felt alone in organizations for a lot of years. I had no idea that there were other people like me out there doing what I was doing until I met folks like Renee, started hanging out with some, people that were involved with SVPG. I didn't have peers for a long time, but that was okay because the work felt good and it was valuable. So I knew it was the right way to do it. And that was my beacon, not my boss telling me what needed to happen.
Awesome. Thank you. A big thanks to all of our panelists. At first I was thinking, oh, well, we'll run for about 45 minutes and just an amazing conversation. Really appreciate. We will send out an email to address, I think, a couple of questions we didn't get to, and to make sure that we connect folks to the folks on the panelists and some resources. Craig, do you have anything else to add?
So I think my job here this morning was the project manager to make sure we started and finished on time, and the product you all delivered was amazing. So thank you so much for that. And I think we're going to finish even a minute early. So there you go. Folks can either refill and run to the next meeting room if you're back face to face, or click off and click on to the next meeting. So
Wonderful.
Fantastic. It's a great conversation. I've got pages of notes here, so I appreciate what you all brought to this.
Oh, well, thank you. It was our pleasure. And again, like, we're serious. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Let's talk. This is what we love. So please reach out.
Excellent. Well, I think, Laura, we can wrap it up. Thanks,
All right.
folks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.